welcome to another movie reviews video. In case you missed it, I did post my top 10 best and least favourite movies of 2018 in between Christmas and New Year. So if you missed any of those, I will leave those linked up there. I'll leave the first one up here. So that was in place of my regular movie review videos last Sunday and the Sunday before. Sunday before was also my birthday. And on that Sunday, I was actually going to see the first movie that I'm going to talk about. As always, I will leave timestamps for each movie in the description box below, so that you can click ahead to the movie that you want to hear my thoughts on. I saw one movie that I'm not going to talk about in this week's video because I'm going to make a book versus movie video about it, which will be up next week, in the week at some point. So make sure you're subscribed so that that lands in your subscription feed and you don't miss out. And next week I will share my review of If Beale Street Could Talk, because I don't like to do the review before I do the book versus movie because I feel like you don't get my first thoughts. Anyway, so yes, when my top 10 least favourite films of 2018 went up, I was going to see Mary Poppins Returns for my birthday. I have mixed thoughts on it. I think it's, as a film on its own, it's a nice film. It's a Disney film. I think Emily Blunt was lovely in it. Nothing really groundbreaking happens in the film. There's nothing there to keep you really gripped whilst watching the film. One of my friends said it best when she was like, it was kind of just a vehicle for the musical numbers, and I completely agree. And the musical numbers were quite good. They weren't mind-blowing, they weren't amazing. So yeah, I've got really mixed thoughts on it. I feel like I want to love it, and I don't, but I liked it, and it was nice, and it was inoffensive, but I came out of it really wanting to watch the original and just enjoy the magic of that. I loved all the nods to the original. That's something I really, really loved. I loved the fact that there was some of the original music playing as like instrumental music in the background of some of the scenes. I love the fact that we acknowledge previous characters who are no longer in this one, and I loved the choice of Julie Walters to play Ellen in this film. Ellen's a great character from the first film, and so the fact that she's still in this film but being played by Julie Walters, genius, loved it. But yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say go out and rush to the cinema to see this one. Maybe wait for it and rent it at home. Okay, then the next film I saw was the next Sunday. So this is why I didn't do movie reviews, because I knew I was only going to see that one movie whilst back in the UK. So once back in Denver, normal movie viewing resumed. Went to see Vice. Oh my goodness, absolutely loved Vice. So being from the UK and being not of voting age when George Bush came into power, I didn't know everything that Dick Cheney was about, because this film is obviously about Dick Cheney, played by Christian Bale, who did an amazing job playing him. And what a transformation. You look and you're like, that's Christian Bale. Then you look at the eyes, you're like, oh yeah, wow. Yeah, I didn't know, so it was quite an education. I didn't necessarily know all of the people in the film. For example, I'd heard of Donald Rumsfeld, but I didn't know the part that he played in Dick Cheney's kind of growth and move into politics. I had never heard of his wife, played by the wonderful Amy Adams, who, again, great casting choice and great transformation. Lynn Cheney, wow, quite the Lady Macbeth. But yeah, the film itself is done so well. So if you're like me and don't know an awful lot about it, it will be an education, but it's not done in a linear, chronological way. It's done so cleverly. It's almost like storytelling, and there's this narrator the whole way through who you think, okay, it's just the narrator of the film, but then you see the narrator and he speaks to you. and you're like, how do you fit into things? And you don't find out until quite far into the film, but that's like an added layer of awesomeness. Yeah, I would go and see it again. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. And I hope it gets some sort of acknowledgement at the Golden Globes tonight, but I feel sure that it will definitely get acknowledgement at the Oscars. So then I went to see Welcome to Marwen. Apparently I'm just watching films with Steve Carell this week. If I didn't know that it was based on a true story, I would think, whoa, this is really quite far-fetched. But it's based on a true story, and it's moving, but in a really kind of quietly moving way. You kind of don't realise that you're being moved until you're crying a little bit at the end and kind of coming out thinking, wow. Yeah, again, it's a film that I think is really cleverly done. It's, I think because of the sort of far-fetched nature of it, so Steve Carell plays Mark, who's gone through an awful attack and basically has this PTSD, but he is an artist and he used to draw, but he doesn't have a good use of his hands now. He has use of his hands, but they're not what they used to be. And so he takes photographs of dolls in this world called Marwen that he created. And this Marwen is in Belgium during the Second World War, and so Mark in the dolls world is this big like hero commander, but his women of Marwen are the ones who kind of keep him safe and save him, and they're all women from his life. So sometimes real life crosses over into Marwen and vice versa, and when somebody new moves across the street, then she gets involved and there are ramifications. There are definitely some worrying moments and definitely some cringeworthy moments in the film because, yeah, it's quietly emotional. It gets you involved without you realising it. Yeah, I think it's definitely underrated, and I think you have to go in and suspend some disbelief because I think getting swept up in it and just being absorbed in it is the best way. And so I think that this is one that you should see in the cinemas rather than seeing at home, because at home you'll be on your phone and kind of missing out on little important details that lead to something in the end. Then went to see Mary Queen of Scots. This film was very long. It's the same length as some of the other films that I've talked about. Mary Poppins is really long but doesn't feel it because of all the music. Mary Queen of Scots is about 6 minutes shorter but feels about an hour and a half longer. So yeah, so just make sure you don't drink too much before going into that one. It was long and the length made it feel kind of boring. I'm quite familiar with the story. There was some details I didn't know in there, whether they're fabricated details or whether they are actually true details. There's a lot of sex in the film that I wasn't expecting to see. Maybe because, yeah, I learnt about this when I was 16 or whatever. But yeah, quite a lot of sex in there. It's interesting the choice they made when casting this film. There were some really interesting choices in there that, yeah, I'm not sure about. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad I saw it, but I wouldn't say I came out going, oh, that was great. Because, yeah, it felt too long, so I got really quite bored. The accents were really interesting. I think there was only a couple of people who actually used their own accent in the film. And whilst, yeah, I know not all accents are going to be perfect, sometimes the interesting accents were a little distracting from the storyline and the actual film itself. Yeah, I'm just a bit like about Mary Queen of Scots. Yeah. And it really bugged me. I was trying to work out who was playing John Knox, and it was David Tennant, someone who does have his own accent. And he was great, and I'm glad we got to see a lot of him. I enjoyed him in the film. Then the next film I saw was If Beale Street Could Talk, but I'm going to talk about that in my film review next week, because during the week I will have my book versus movie up for this one. And then finally, my favourite film of the year so far, because technically I saw Vice in 2018, so my favourite film of 2019 so far, has to be The Favourite. This is one where most people have their own accents, except Emma Stone, who does just a great job of her English accent. I didn't kind of hear it slipping at any point. I'm quite picky when it comes to accents. It's something I studied at uni, and so, yeah, if there's an accent going wrong, nah, I can't stand it, and it, like, gets in my ears. And so yeah, Emma Stone in this one I thought was great. Again, a lot more sex than I was expecting in this film. A lot of sex in this film. But I thought it was funny. I thought it was clever. I thought it was intriguing. I thought it was absorbing. You know, it's led by these three women. Yes, there are some men in there, and yes, they do have some influence on these women. But you know, it's definitely all female lead and led, and just, yeah, I love the fact that it's these three women and they have power over things. And Emma Stone and Rachel Weisz, their characters have power over the Queen, and the Queen kind of realizes it, and sometimes she tries to take that power back, but that's where the intrigue of the film and the absorbing nature of the film comes in. So yeah, definitely recommend that one. That and Vice have been really good picks for me this week, and I would go and see them both again in a second. There are some other films, having been away for like 2 weeks worth of films basically, there are other films I still want to catch up on that are out here. So yeah, I might not be rewatching, but I imagine that both of those films are gonna get nods in the Oscar nominations. So I imagine that even if the amount of showtime starts to tail off a bit, when we come to Oscar nominations, it'll pick back up again. And last year I went to see all of the Oscar nominated films through a pass that I got with Regal, and so I'm hoping to be able to see that again. So I imagine I will end up rewatching both of those films. But yeah, if there are any new releases that you would like to hear my thoughts on, as always, let me know in the comments, and I will get myself off to the cinema and share my thoughts with you. Make sure you subscribe so that that book versus movie of If Beale Street Could Talk lands in your subscription feed. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and let me know if you have seen anything in 2019 so far that is remarkable enough to be called your favourite film of 2019 so far. I know we're only on the 6th, but hey, you know, you never know. I will be back with a book haul tomorrow, so make sure you keep an eye out for that one, and I will see you with more movie reviews next Sunday. Bye.